Good morning and welcome to the Killik & Co market update. We've seen some weakness in markets this week as concerns grow about a potential second wave of the coronavirus. The state of Texas in the US has put its plans to reopen its economy on hold following a new spike in cases. On the other hand, here in the UK, we've yet to see a second spike, despite the fact that we had all those protests 2 weeks ago, so a global second wave is definitely not a certainty. Here in the UK, our high streets have been very busy following the reopening of shops last week, but the pain for commercial property landlords is definitely not over yet. This week was the week in which commercial property tenants were supposed to pay their rent for the next quarter, but it seems that a very small number have actually paid their rent on time. Apparently just 14% of retail property tenants have paid their rent and just 23% of office tenants. This is really bad news for the commercial property companies that own these types of property, and in fact this morning shopping centre owner Into has announced it will probably have to call in the administrators and its shares have fallen to less than 2p. There are many industries that have actually done well during lockdown, examples being cloud computing and online deliveries, but another of these is esports, which is essentially watching other people playing video games. Esports is in the news this morning following an announcement that David Beckham has made quite a big investment into an esports company. The industry has been growing for quite some time, as you can see from this quote from PwC, which talks about esports, and it says that from a niche global market with $194 million in revenue in 2014, esports revenues leapt to $980 million in 2019 and were projected to rise to almost $1.8 billion by 2023. But this was before COVID-19, and now this projected figure looks understated. And in fact, we've been looking at some data from the most popular esports platform, Twitch, which is owned by Amazon, and it does show a huge spike in viewing numbers for the lockdown period. If you have a look at this chart here, you can see that the peak viewing numbers for the month of June were over 6 million people, so very huge numbers indeed. It's likely that a lot of these people have started watching esports because there hasn't been much ordinary sport to watch, so we'll just have to wait and see how many people stick with esports after this lockdown period is eased. And finally this week, Brexit is back on the agenda and Boris Johnson has been meeting with the EU once again. Boris is still insisting that our transition period has to end at the end of this year, and that doesn't really allow much time for a deal to be reached. Because of this, there's been quite a lot of negative commentary about sterling in the press this week. If you have a look at this chart here, you can see that sterling has weakened against the dollar quite considerably over the last 10 years. Any UK-based investors investing in overseas stocks would have benefited from this currency move. Let's have a look at the calendar for next week. We've got results out from Rolls-Royce, from Primark owner Associated British Foods, and from cardboard packaging company DS Smith. That's it from us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.